I'm on a mission to get my work into a professional gallery, but to stand a chance, I need to avoid the one mistake that ruins paintings. Most of us start by painting the individual objects, a house, a tree, a fence, one at a time. But this just leaves us with a disjointed page of objects. To make our work look professional, we need to stop painting individual things and start seeing the big shapes. Today, I'm going to show you how to merge these individual elements into one powerful story using the snow scene near my house.
Look at this composition. You see the sky, a house, a fence, and the road. This is what I was talking about, where it's tempting to paint them separately, but we're going to unify them before the paint even dries. The first secret is to use a big brush. This will help prevent you from getting caught up in the details, especially at this stage. I'm starting with a size 14 round and painting the sky and the major snow shadows in one continuous step. Notice I'm using the exact same color for the sky as I am for the shadows on the snow. This is essential to cohesion. If you paint these elements separately, you risk them looking stuck on. Once a painting feels disconnected, it's almost impossible to recover. We're building the skeleton right now upon which we'll build the rest of the story. Though I've used mostly Cobalt Blue for the shadows, I'm starting to drop in a little bit of Perylene Maroon to make those shadows more lively. Notice how I'm using a deeper value of Cobalt Blue as I get closer to the foreground and the viewer. This adds an atmospheric perspective without having to worry about the complexities of perspective like vanishing points or 1-point perspective and 2-point perspective. This is a very effective technique to give a sense of distance by making things in the background look more faded. I'm taking that same big brush approach for the background trees, using a wet into wet technique to keep the tops fuzzy. This creates an immediate sense of distance without having to wrestle with complex perspective. If I tried to paint every individual branch with a tiny brush, those trees would compete with the house and the viewer wouldn't know where to focus. Working like this is a technical challenge because you're managing 2 different moisture levels at once. If my brush is too wet, the paint will bleed into a blurry mess. But if I wait too long to lay down the pigment, the edges will harden and look disconnected. So I'm constantly watching the sheen on the paper and the amount of pigment on my brush. It's really a race against humidity, and I have to be faster than the evaporation. You also have to watch out for water seeping into areas like the house, like just what happened to me. If that happens, just dab it with the tissue and keep going. It's an easy fix if you can catch it now, but if you miss it, you'll have to lift the pigment later, which takes away from the freshness of the painting. A gallery curator is looking for those controlled soft transitions, not pointy trees that look like they were drawn with a pen. Working wet into wet gives you a generous window to get the values right. If the paper starts to dry too quickly, a light spray will keep it active. This is how you achieve that soft, receding look in the background. It creates a sense of air and space that a dry brush simply can't mimic. While my painting was drying, I went and checked out some galleries in the local area. And this is going to be a tough search. Some of them actually want you to have an art degree. I don't have an art degree. I have a chemistry degree. And I know people who've gotten into galleries, good galleries, without an art degree. So I don't know what's up with that. But anyway, I'm going to keep looking. I've got the names of a couple of galleries that I can contact and find out, what do they need? How do you apply? Things like that. So I've had galleries approach me in the past, but me approaching a gallery, I'm a newbie. Now we're moving from those broad atmospheric washes to the sharp focus of the foreground trees. These are the elements that really ground the painting and help lead the viewer's eye in. I'm switching to a smaller round brush to paint the branches thinner and thinner as we reach up towards the top of the tree. I'm also adding in some additional shadows that make more sense to put in now because now I have a stronger tree trunk. If you're enjoying this video but want to see the entire painting process, you can find it at paintingwithpeggy.com. There is where I do weekly live paint-alongs that I also record, and you can go back and review anytime. Here's an important point. Using these dark, sharp shapes makes the viewer feel they are close. They also tell us where the shadows go. Now, if you realize that your shadow needs more depth later after the paint is dry, don't panic. Just add another layer of shadow color right over the existing brush strokes. And even though we're working in the foreground, and I just talked about how sharp everything needs to be, once you get to those really fine branches in the trees, don't be afraid to go ahead and use a wet into wet technique to feather out those edges. It'll look great. Now it's time to build the three-dimensional form of the house. I'm mixing Cobalt Blue with a touch of Perylene Maroon to create a warm shadow color. I use this for the thin shadow under the soffit and define the shape of the chimney. Now, when it comes to the windows, I've learned that being too precise actually works against you. My goal here is to create a sense of the house being sunlit on a cold afternoon and not to draw every architectural line. I'm not being very precise with these windows, and I've seen in paintings I really like, it seems to be the way they do it, more sketchy rather than really perfect. And in fact, in my own paintings, when I'm very perfect and get all the details in the windows, it just looks fake. It's all about making the house command attention without it feeling fussy. But here's the real challenge. The one thing that kills the fine art vibe, symmetry. I have to fight my brain's urge to make things very even and symmetrical. So use the reference photo as a guide. Nature is not perfectly symmetrical, but sometimes makes us think that it is. In reality, it's never perfectly balanced. If you paint these trees too regularly, your work stops looking like fine art and starts looking like folk art. Randomness is your friend here. A gallery curator is looking for that organic, slightly wild character, not a row of identical lollipops, which I have seen in some paintings. In the far midground, I've added in some additional trees with some details and that distant fence. By the time I needed to paint in the paddock, I realized I could no longer see my pencil lines. Well, this has happened to me before. What do I do about it? I'm actually drawing on the painting with a pencil to make those lines darker. You see, I do not like pencil lines showing in my watercolors. Some watercolor artists don't mind this, but for me, it's a pet peeve. I don't like it. So I tend to draw my pencil lines lightly. Well, this is what happens when I draw too light. Then when I paint over them, I can't see them. So I find myself going back and redrawing pencil lines. Before I can paint the paddock fence, I need to darken the midground and foreground shadows. Otherwise, if I darken them after painting the paddock fence, the fence will smear. That's why the conventional advice in watercolor is to paint light to dark, though there are times I break that rule. The fence is a specific challenge. It's a black fence. Because of the sunlight, it actually reflects as a light gray. I start with that lighter value and then come back with a darker mix of violet and raw umber for the intersecting boards. Here, perspective is key. These lines are the final invitations to draw the viewer and feel like they're stepping into the scene. Now for the final touch, the snow on the branches. For this, I'm using Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed-Proof white ink. I love how this branch drapes over the road, and adding these small highlights gives it that crisp, realistic snap. This is what I call the jewelry phase. It's the sparkle that catches the eye, but it only works because the foundation, those big shapes we started with, is solid.
And there it is, the first of 24 pieces headed for a gallery. By resisting the urge to pick up a small brush too early and forcing the big shapes to connect, we've created a piece that feels like a single cohesive moment in time. And the jewelry we added only works with that strong foundation that we set from the start. This is the standard I'm going to have to hit every time if a curator is going to take my work seriously. And I don't know if I'm going to get into a gallery, but with the way the snow scene turned out, I feel encouraged and excited for the next challenge. If you want to learn more about using big brushes to simplify your wood scenes, check out this video.